I made a joke about how he was poor and he made me regret every word. Hello, Reddit. This is my first time posting on here, or even using this app, honestly. A friend of mine suggested it, saying it might help me gain some clarity or perspective. She claims Reddit is good for advice sometimes, so here I am, giving it a try. Before I start, let me just say, I know I'm not perfect, okay? I'm not going to sit here and pretend I haven't made mistakes. But let's not jump to conclusions here. I'm not some monster or villain. I feel like people are too quick to judge without understanding the full picture. So yeah, I'll admit it. I may have been a little at fault here. A little. But no one is perfect, right? And honestly, I feel like things were blown way out of proportion. I mean, if you ask me, there's fault on both sides in this situation. Anyway, let me introduce myself. My name is Michelle, and I'm 29 years old. My husband, well, let's call him Leon for privacy's sake, is also 29. We've been married for about 2 years. Things between us have always been great, or at least I thought they were. I mean, sure, we've had our ups and downs like any other couple, but who doesn't? For the most part, we were happy. At least I was happy, and I assumed Leon was too. That's why this whole situation feels so surreal. I feel like I'm stuck in some ridiculous soap opera, except the drama isn't entertaining. It's my real life. And honestly, I don't think I deserve this. I really don't. Like I said before, Leon and I have always been great. Well, except for some issues, of course. And by issues, I mean Leon doesn't know how to take a joke. It's one of those things that's honestly baffling to me. I'm a naturally playful person. I grew up in a family where we teased each other all the time. It was our love language, you know? Banter, sarcasm, a little ribbing here and there. It's how we showed affection. But Leon? Oh no, he just doesn't get it. Anytime I say something that's even slightly teasing, he acts like I've just launched a personal attack on him. It's exhausting, honestly. Now don't get me wrong, I love him. I really do. But I think it's fair to say that his inability to laugh at himself has caused some tension in our relationship. It's not all bad, obviously. Leon is sweet, hardworking, and responsible. He's everything you'd want in a husband. But sometimes, his sensitivity is just too much. Let me give you some context. I grew up in a relatively well-off family. We weren't billionaires or anything, but we were comfortable. Private schools, vacations abroad, that kind of thing. And even though things changed later, my family fell on hard times, and trust me, they were really hard times. I still grew up with certain expectations and a certain lifestyle. Leon, on the other hand, grew up in a more modest household. And that's fine. I mean, it's not like I'm a snob or anything. I've never judged him for his background. I think it's great that he had a humble upbringing. It shaped him into the man he is today. But let's be real. Our differences in upbringing have always been there, lurking under the surface. And while I've done my best to be understanding, it hasn't always been easy. I try to keep things light. I try to joke around and make the best of our differences, but Leon just doesn't know how to take it. He takes everything so seriously, like I'm out to insult him or something. It's frustrating because I feel like I'm constantly walking on eggshells, trying to avoid hurting his delicate feelings. Sometimes I wonder if he even tries to understand where I'm coming from. Still, we've always made it work, or at least I thought we had. I guess I didn't realize how much these little things were building up. For me, they were just harmless jokes. For Leon, well, let's just say I'm starting to think he's been keeping a mental list of every comment I've ever made. As I said before, I grew up in a family where teasing each other was basically second nature. It was just how we communicated. It meant you were part of the family, you know? So naturally, when I got together with Leon, I brought that energy into our relationship. I was used to teasing him, especially because in the beginning he never said anything about it. At first, he'd just laugh along or shrug it off, and I assumed he was fine with it. Honestly, if anything, I thought he liked it. I mean, why wouldn't he? It was playful, lighthearted. It was me being me. So I got comfortable, really comfortable. By the time Leon finally started complaining about it, I was already in too deep. Teasing him had become second nature to me. And okay, I'll admit that when he first brought it up, I didn't exactly take it seriously. I thought he was just being overly sensitive, like he always is, and that he'd eventually get over it. But when it became clear that he wasn't going to just get over it, I did try to change. Honestly, I did. But come on, You can't expect me to just stop overnight. That's not how habits work. Change is a process. And frankly, I think Leon could have been a little more patient about it. Now here's the thing. Most of my teasing revolved around Leon's financial situation. It wasn't anything malicious, just small comments, little digs here and there. You know, harmless stuff, like joking about how he couldn't splurge on certain things or how we had to budget so tightly. I mean, it's not like I was lying. When we first started dating and even after we got married, we were struggling. And it's not like I didn't struggle too. I was right there with him, eating ramen noodles and cutting coupons. So in my mind, the jokes were just a way to lighten the mood. It was never meant to hurt him. To me, it was just humor, a way to cope with the reality of our situation. But apparently, Leon didn't see it that way. At first, I thought he was just overreacting. He'd get quiet or give me a look whenever I made one of those jokes, but I figured he just needed to lighten up. I mean, come on, it's not like I was attacking him. They were jokes. Still, over time, I started to notice that his reactions were getting stronger. He'd roll his eyes, mutter something under his breath, or even leave the room. And when he finally confronted me about it, saying that my jokes made him feel inadequate and embarrassed, I was honestly shocked. I didn't think it was that serious. I told him that wasn't my intention at all, and that he was blowing things out of proportion. But the truth is, by that point, the teasing had become such a normal part of our dynamic that I didn't know how to stop. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Change my entire personality? It wasn't like I didn't care about his feelings. I did. But you have to understand, teasing is how I was raised. It's who I am. It's not something I can just turn off like a switch. So, yeah, I kept doing it. Maybe not as often, and maybe I toned it down a little, but I still made those jokes. I honestly thought Leon was being too sensitive and that he just needed to toughen up. I mean, everyone gets teased about something, right? It's not the end of the world. Or at least I didn't think it was. Looking back now, I guess I underestimated how much it bothered him. But at the time, I didn't see it that way. I thought we were fine. Sure, we had our struggles, but what couple doesn't? I figured he'd eventually learn to laugh about it, just like I did. I realized that the way I'm talking about this might make me seem dismissive or even like I'm just brushing it all off. But I'm honestly not. I know there were plenty of times when the things I said really did hurt Leon. I can admit now that some of my jokes weren't even jokes. They were meant to sting. Looking back, there were moments when I knew I had crossed the line and hurt him. But in my defense, I never thought he'd take it so seriously. I didn't mean for it to cut that deep. I didn't think it was that bad. Okay, fine. I'll admit it. There were times when Leon explicitly asked me to stop, warned me to tone it down, and even said he didn't find my teasing funny anymore. And I did try, at least for a while. But honestly, when you're so used to doing something, it's not easy to just stop cold turkey. It's a habit. I grew up in a family where teasing was just how we showed love. I told myself Leon just didn't get that yet. I thought he'd understand eventually, or at least let it slide. But then came the joke. The joke. That one stupid, thoughtless comment that turned everything upside down. Even now, thinking about it, I know it was the worst thing I ever said to him. I regret it more than anything. It was one of those moments where as soon as the words left my mouth, I wished I could take them back. It happened at a small gathering with friends, a casual get-together. People were laughing, joking around, and the conversation turned to something about life experiences. Someone asked a rhetorical question about how people would know certain things, and I, in my infinite wisdom, blurted out something about how Leon was poor and still is. The second the words came out, I felt the atmosphere shift. The laughter around the table faltered, replaced by an awkward silence. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, and some people started exchanging those uncomfortable side glances like they were trying to figure out how to react. My heart sank. It was not the reaction I'd expected. I'd meant it as a lighthearted jab, just something to keep the conversation going and maybe get a laugh or two. Instead, it landed like a lead balloon. No. Leon didn't say anything right away, which, to be honest, surprised me. I thought he'd at least try to defend himself or make some sort of comeback. But no. He just kind of sat there, looking down at his plate, his face completely unreadable. The rest of the evening he was quiet, withdrawn. He didn't laugh or joke around like he usually would. Eventually, he excused himself and left the gathering early. At first, I brushed it off. I told myself he was overreacting. I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal, was it? People joke about stuff like that all the time. I figured he just needed to cool off and we'd talk about it later. But deep down, I knew I had messed up. That evening, when we got home, I decided to apologize. I figured a simple sorry would smooth things over and we could move on. But when I brought it up, Leon confronted me. He didn't yell or get angry, but the way he looked at me, like he couldn't believe I'd said something like that, made me feel worse than any shouting match ever could. He told me how much my comment had hurt him, how it wasn't just the joke itself, but the way it made him feel like I saw him as less than, like I was looking down on him. At first, I tried to listen, but then I got defensive. I told him it was just a joke, that I hadn't meant it that way. I told him he was overreacting and that he needed to stop taking everything so personally. That was my mistake. I dismissed his feelings instead of acknowledging them. I tried to justify myself instead of genuinely apologizing. And I think that's when things really started to fall apart between us. Over the next few weeks, Leon started to change in ways that I didn't fully understand at the time. He became distant, almost like a stranger in our own home. He stopped engaging in our usual routines, the quiet moments we used to share, the little jokes we used to exchange, even the simple acts of affection that had once come so easily. Instead, he poured himself into work with an intensity I had never seen before. He started staying late at the office almost every day. When he did come home, it was like he was just passing through, not really present. And as much as I noticed the shift, I guess I didn't take it seriously enough. I figured he was just angry or sulking and that with time, things would eventually go back to normal. That's how relationships work, right? You fight, you get mad, but then you move on. Except this wasn't one of those fights. I tried half-heartedly to bring things back to where they used to be. I'd make his favorite meals, try to get him to watch a show we both liked, or casually ask about his day. But Leon wasn't responsive. He'd nod or give one-word answers, but he didn't engage the way he used to. And I'll be honest, after a while I got tired of trying. It's not like I thought things were over. I just assumed that he needed time. I convinced myself that once he was ready, he'd come back to me, and everything would fall into place. But time didn't fix anything. Months passed, and Leon stayed the same. Or maybe he was changing, and I was just refusing to see it. Either way, I didn't put in the effort to figure it out. As long as he was still living with me, I told myself things were fine. But in hindsight, I can see how foolish I was to ignore all the signs that something was deeply, deeply wrong. Then about a week ago, everything came crashing down. Leon came home early one day, which was a shock in itself since he hadn't been home before sunset in months. At first, I thought it was a good sign, like maybe he was ready to open up, or maybe things were finally turning a corner for us. And when he started talking about this big project at work, I felt hopeful for the first time in ages. Leon explained that this project was something he had been working toward for a very long time, and that it was finally getting approved. He said it was going to be a game changer for him, for us, for everything. He said this project would be the start of a new chapter. Naturally, I was thrilled. This sounded like the breakthrough we needed, the thing that would finally bring us back together. But I was so wrong. After letting me get all excited, after watching me beam with pride and enthusiasm, Leon dropped the bombshell. He calmly told me that he wanted a divorce. I froze. I think my brain just shut down for a few moments because I couldn't process what he was saying. Divorce? That couldn't be right. That wasn't even on the table. We were going through a rough patch, sure, but I thought we were still solid at the core. But Leon was serious. Dead serious. No. He said that he had been thinking about this for a long time, and that my behavior, the jokes, the digs, the disrespect, had been building up for years. He said that he never forgot that joke I made at the gathering, and that it was the final straw for him. He admitted that it had hurt him deeply, but instead of confronting me further, he had decided to channel that hurt into motivation. That joke, he said, was what drove him to work so hard on this project. And now that he had achieved what he wanted, he was done. Done with me, done with our marriage, done with everything. I tried to argue. I told him he was being dramatic. that he was overreacting, that I never meant for those jokes to hurt him. I told him I loved him and didn't want a divorce. But Leon wouldn't budge. He said he was tired of being treated like less, tired of feeling small in his own home. Things got ugly. We argued, really badly. And then before I could even process what was happening, Leon told me to pack my things and leave. He kicked me out of our shared apartment, the apartment we had built a life in. Sure, he was the one who paid the rent, but it was still our home. Or at least that's what I thought. I ended up staying at a friend's place because I couldn't bear to go back to my parents. I knew they'd only take Leon's side. They've always loved him and supported him more than they've supported me. Even my friend, while kind enough to let me stay with her, thinks Leon is right. She doesn't say it outright, but I can tell. At least she doesn't rub it in my face. Now I'm at my wit's end. I've tried everything I can think of to fix things with Leon. I've apologized over and over again. I've tried to show him that I'm serious about changing, that I don't want a divorce. But nothing is working. I don't know what else to do. I love my husband, and I don't want to lose him. Please, please, please. If anyone has advice, I'm begging you. How do I fix this? How do I make him see that I'm truly sorry, and that I didn't mean any of it the way he took it? How do I get my husband back? Update. First of all, let me just start by saying this. I posted here looking for advice. I didn't post here to get roasted, insulted, or lectured on how wrong I was. Trust me, I already know I was wrong, and I'm not here trying to paint myself as a victim. I don't need people to keep pointing out what I did wrong. I'm fully aware of my mistakes. What I need is advice on how to fix things, how to save my marriage, and how to stop this divorce. That's it. Yes, I know I'm a difficult person to deal with. Yes, I've been stubborn and careless with my words in the past. But that's also why I love my husband so much. Because he has always been the one who could handle me. He's always been patient, understanding, and steady, no matter how difficult I got. And now, I feel like I've lost that, and I don't know how to get it back. Honestly, posting here wasn't as helpful as I thought it would be. My friend told me this subreddit was great for advice, but reading through the responses has been disappointing, to say the least. It feels like everyone is just eager to tear me down and tell me to accept the divorce or let him go. But that's not what I want. I don't want a divorce. I want to fix things with my husband because I love him, and I believe we can work through this. Now, for an actual update, for those of you who DM'd me asking how things are going, thank you for your concern. I did manage to get in touch with my husband. We had a very long, very emotional conversation. I tried my best to apologize again, to explain myself, and to show him that I'm serious about making things right. But he still wants a divorce. He told me that the things I said to him over the years have stuck with him and hurt him more deeply than I ever realized. He said that no matter how much I apologize, he doesn't think he'll ever be able to forgive or forget the words I've thrown at him. He said he's come to the realization that he's lost all love for me. And honestly, I call bullshit. I think he's just using my mistakes as an excuse. My friend pointed out that this sudden push for divorce might have more to do with his new project than anything else. From what I've heard, this project could potentially make him millions. And she thinks he's rushing the divorce because he doesn't want to share that with me or take care of me now that he's finally made it. It's insane to think about, but the more I do, the more it hurts. I've been with this man since before he had anything. I struggled with him. I supported him through tough times. And now that he's on the verge of success, he wants to push me aside? I know I've made mistakes. I know I've said things I shouldn't have, but doesn't a marriage mean working through the hard stuff? Doesn't it mean forgiving and moving forward? I feel like I've been tossed aside like I never mattered, and it's devastating. To make things worse, my parents have now gotten involved. They called me the other day, furious that I hadn't told them what was going on. Apparently my husband told them everything. And of course, like I expected, they're completely on his side. They love him. They've always loved him. And they've made it clear they think he's in the right. It was infuriating. I told them not to talk to me until they can finally come to their senses and remember that I'm their child, not my husband. But honestly, that just added to the weight I'm carrying right now. This whole situation has been affecting me so badly. My performance at work has dropped significantly. My friends are all saying I need to move on. and I feel like I'm losing myself more and more each day. I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know how to convince him to give us another chance. I've tried apologizing. I've tried reaching out. I've tried everything I can think of, but nothing is working. I love my husband, and I don't want to lose him. Please, if anyone has any advice, real advice, on how to fix this, I'm begging you. This has been the hardest thing I've ever gone through, and I just don't know how to handle it anymore. Update. Hello, Reddit. I told myself I wouldn't update again because of all the criticism I got in my last post, but I really need somewhere to vent. Writing in a notebook or journaling just doesn't hit the same way as posting here. I guess I'm hoping that getting everything out will at least help me feel a little lighter, even if I don't get much advice. A lot has happened since my last update, and honestly, I'm so tired. I feel like I'm drowning in everything happening all at once, and I can't keep my head above water anymore. First things first, I got served. Yep, my husband wasn't bluffing about the divorce. He's not just serious, he's rushing it. I knew this was coming. I knew it was inevitable. But actually holding those papers in my hands, it felt like a punch to the gut. I still can't believe this is happening. That night, I did something incredibly stupid. I went to a bar, got completely wasted, and made an absolute fool of myself. I called my husband over and over and left him a ton of messages. Some were begging him to take me back. Some were insulting him. It was a mess. I can't even bring myself to look at my phone now because I know what I sent him, and I hate myself for it. How do I even face him after that? Things with my friend, the one I'm staying with, aren't going great either. We're barely speaking, and I overheard her talking on the phone the other day. She doesn't know I heard, but she mentioned that she's planning to ask me to leave soon. And honestly, I can't even blame her. I've been such a mess, and I know I'm not exactly the best house guest right now, but I have nowhere else to go. My parents? They're not an option either. They've made it clear that they're on my husband's side in all of this. When I initially told them to stop talking to me, I thought I was standing up for myself. But now, I realize I just burned a bridge I desperately need. My parents are devout Catholics, and they already think I'm entirely at fault for this divorce. In their eyes, I've committed some unforgivable sin, and they won't even entertain the idea of letting me come home. And to make matters worse, my husband brought up our apartment. The lease is ending soon, and he asked if I wanted to take over renting it, or if he should just break the lease. I mean, seriously? How am I supposed to afford that place on my own? He knows I can't. He's always been the one paying the rent. It feels like he's rubbing salt in the wound, even though I know he's probably just trying to tie up loose ends. I told him to go ahead and break the lease since there's no way I can keep it. We've barely talked beyond that. Every conversation is cold and transactional. He's not open to counseling or even basic communication about saving our marriage. He flat out told me that not even therapy could fix us. I don't even know what that means, but it shattered whatever sliver of hope I had left. This whole situation has destroyed me. I've been spiraling at work, and now I'm dangerously close to losing my job. We have a 3-strike system, and I've already gotten 2 strikes. One more, and I'm out. I'm trying so hard to hold it together, but it's like I'm fighting a losing battle. I'm depressed, barely eating, and just empty. What makes it worse is that my husband seems fine. He's moving on, smiling, living his life like nothing's wrong. And seeing that just makes me feel even worse. I know it's not rational, but it feels like he's happy without me. Like he's thriving now that I'm out of his life. I hate how much I regret everything. I hate that I didn't listen to him when he first tried to tell me how he felt. I hate that I brushed him off, ignored his needs, and took him for granted. And I hate that there's nothing I can do to change any of it. If I could go back in time and undo everything, I would. I'd give anything to fix my mistakes, to take back the thoughtless comments, to make him feel loved and valued the way he deserved. But I can't. And that's the hardest part of all of this. The fact that I can't change the past, no matter how much I want to. So yeah, that's where I'm at. My life is a mess, my marriage is over, and I don't know how to move forward. I'm just tired. Tired of fighting, tired of hoping, tired of feeling like this. If you've made it this far, thanks for reading. I don't know what I'm looking for anymore. Advice, sympathy, maybe just someone to listen. But thanks anyway. I needed to get this off my chest. Update. Hello, Reddit. So, yeah, here I am again. I've been avoiding making this update for a long time now. Honestly, I didn't want to. After my last post, the comments were brutal. So many "I told you so" comments, people just ripping me apart, and to top it off, some of my friends found my post. They forwarded it to Leon, yes, my now ex-husband, because why not make an already humiliating situation even more unbearable? The embarrassment was so overwhelming I swore I'd never update again. But here I am. A lot of you have been asking for an update, and I figured it's time to stop ignoring the DMs, and honestly, venting here is still better than screaming into the void. So here it is, the final update, probably. As you all probably guessed, and many of you hoped, the divorce is finalized. It happened so quickly I'm still spinning. At first I tried to fight it. I tried dragging it out, hoping Leon might reconsider or that maybe we could work through it. But everyone around me, literally everyone, told me to stop. My friends, what few I have left, were mad at me for trying to delay things. Even my parents, who haven't exactly been supportive, told me to just let it go. So I did. I gave up. The divorce went through without a hitch. No assets to divide since we kept separate finances. No kids, no spousal support. Apparently 2 years of marriage doesn't count for much. And just like that, it was over. And then, right after the divorce was finalized, Leon's life took off. I mean, took off. I found out because, of course, I've been stalking his Instagram and his sister's Instagram. His sister, who loves posting everything, shared pictures of his new house, his new car, and her enrollment in some fancy private school. They're taking vacations now, too. The kind of vacations Leon and I always talked about but could never afford when we were together. Seeing all of this unfold on social media was like a knife to the heart. It made me feel like I was the bad luck holding him back, and now that I'm out of his life, he's finally thriving. I won't lie, I still stalk his socials way too much. It's unhealthy. I know it. But it's like I can't stop torturing myself with what could have been. It's like he's living the life we should have had together, but without me. It's heartbreaking. Meanwhile, I'm stuck in this endless downward spiral, watching from the sidelines as his life gets better and better. After the divorce, things went downhill for me fast. I mentioned in my last post that my job had a 3-strike policy. Well, shortly after the divorce, I got into an argument with a coworker and ended up with my 3rd strike. That was it. I was fired. They gave me the bare minimum severance pay, which didn't even cover a month's rent. And, as if that wasn't bad enough, my friend, who had been letting me crash at her place, decided it was time for me to go. I overheard her again on the phone talking about how she was sick of me freeloading. A few days later, she asked me to pack my things. I had nowhere to go. No family willing to take me in, no siblings, and my parents flat out refused to help. They're strict Catholics and saw the divorce as my failure, not Leon's. They think I'm entirely to blame, and honestly, they're not wrong. With no options left, I took a minimum wage job that came with employee housing. It's a tiny room, barely enough space to breathe, but at least I'm not on the streets. Saving money for anything, an apartment, a better future, is next to impossible. Every paycheck disappears into bills, groceries, and the mountain of debt I've accumulated. Every day is a struggle just to make ends meet. I think about Leon every single day. I miss him so much it physically hurts. My life feels so empty and lonely without him. I've replayed our last arguments in my head over and over again, wishing I could go back in time and fix everything. He's thriving, financially, socially, emotionally. I'm barely surviving. And as much as I hate to admit it, I know it's all my fault. At one point, I even wrote him a letter, a long, heartfelt apology for everything I did. I poured my soul into that letter, but in the end, I couldn't bring myself to send it. What's the point? He's moved on. Sending the letter wouldn't change anything, and it would only reopen wounds that are probably healing for him. Still, writing it gave me a tiny bit of closure. It helped me accept that I can't undo the past, no matter how much I want to. To be completely honest, things haven't gotten better for me. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm thriving or finding myself or whatever. That would be a lie. My life has been one long downward spiral since the divorce. I realize now just how sheltered I was when I was with Leon. He protected me from the harsh realities of the world in so many ways, and I took it all for granted. Now that I'm on my own, I feel completely unprepared for life. For now, I'm just trying to survive.